Good day everyone. Welcome to BSEE 34 Survey of Philippines Literature in English. I am Alexandria C. Samarita and now we are going to discuss about the Filipino literature. So what are we going to discuss? The first one is Filipino writers, the Tagalog drama, the Tagalog short story, the Tagalog poetry, and we have the other form of literature and literature of the Kapampangans or Pampanga literature, and lastly is Visayan literature. I am with Daniel Josh Ricamonte, Margie Erlente, Annette Gwen Balvin, Carlin Valenzuela, and lastly Aiza Diñega. So, Filipino literature, Florante at Laura of Francisco Balagtas and Urbana at Culisa of Modesto de Castro became the inspiration of the Tagalog writers. So, si Florante at Laura, yung story of Florante of Laura of Francisco Balagtas, give the inspiration to the Filipino writers to continue the Tagalog writers. So, according to Julian Cruz Balmazeda, he classified the three kinds of Tagalog poets. The first one is poet of the hearts, makata ng pilip ng puso. And the following is the member of the poet of the heart. We have Lope K. Santos, Inigo Ed Regalado, Carlos Gatmaatan, Pedro de Gracias del Rosario, Efidencio Santos, Amado, V. Hernandez, Nemesio Garbaña, and Mar Antonio. And we have Poet of Life, Makata ng Buhay. It's led by Lope K. Santos, Jose Corazon de Santos, Laurentino Colantes, Patricio Mariano Carlos Gamitan, and Amado V. Hernandez. And lastly, we have Poets of the Stage, Makata ng Tanghalan, led by Aurelio Tolentino, Patricio Mariano, Severino Reyes, and Tomas Remigio. So, we have 5 Filipino writers. The first one is Lope K. Santos, Jose Corazon de Jesus, Amado V. Hernandez, Valeriano Hernandez Pena, and lastly, we have Inigo Ed Regalado. So first, let's talk about the first Filipino writers, which is Lope K. Santos. His full name is Lope Santos Y. Canseco. He is born September 25, 1879, and he died May 1, 1963. He is a novelist, poet, and author, and grammarian covered chief period of Tagalog literature, which is American, Japanese, and contemporary period. Again, si Lope K. Santos, he is a novelist, poet, and author, and he covered at least periods of... I'm sorry for the interruption. Again, si Lope K. Santos, he is a novelist, poet, and author, and he covered 3 periods of Tagalog literature, which is American, Japanese, and the contemporary period. Next slide. So, Lope K. Santos, he is the father of the national language grammar. So, if Emmanuel L. Quezon is called the father of the national language, Lope K. Santos is called the father of the national language grammar. He was also called the Apo of the Tagalog writers. So, in the year of 1952, Taniw, Taliban ng Inang Wika or Centennial of Motherland. Si Banagat Sikat or Radiance and Sunrise, it is published in the 1906, known as the Bible of Working Class Filipinos. So, one of Banaag at Sikat is one of the first literary novels of Lope K. Santos. And also, it is all about Delphine and his love for the daughter of the rich landlord. So the summary of the Banagat Sikat, It is involved around Delphin, a poor man in love with Manny. Manny is a capitalist's daughter, so Delphin is a socialist, while Felipe is his friend is an artist. Delphin wants Delphin wants the citizen to have more rights in business and property relations. So he believed that society could be changed through education. So on the other hand, Felipe believes in tearing down society walls. So factories should be owned by those who work there and land owned by those who till it. So that is the summary of Banaag at Sikat. In English, Radiance and Sunrise. So the next one, the second Filipino writer is Jose Corazon de Jesus. The full name of Jose Corazon de Jesus is Jose Cecilio Corazon de Jesus y Pangilinan. He is born November 22, 1894, and he died May 26, 1932 at the age of 37. He is very popular, known as Joseng Batote. He was also called the poet of love in his time. His style reflects the love for the country and social consciousness. So again, Jose Corazon de Jesus, he is very popular, known as Joseng Batote. And he also called the poet of love in his time. And his style reflects the love for the country and social consciousness. And he also used the following pen name: Corazon, Joseng Katuwa, Anastasio Salagubang, Sundalong Lasing Pipito Matintiman, Biterbi, Ilaw, Paru-Parong Asul, and Bayaning May Sugat. So that is the other pen name of Corazon de Jesus. So, the famous work of Jose Corazon de Jesus is Ang Isang Punong Kahoy in English, A Tree. So, it was published in Liwayway magazine in 1932. So, this poem is famous example of emotive descriptions, melancholy appeal, passionate self-talk, and transformation as result of facing life reality. So, ang isang punong kahoy, yung poem analysis, the diction, so the denotative meaning of the message of the poem is about a tree and its experiences as the situations various. So, meanwhile, the connotative meaning of it's about life and death. So, the choice of the words of the poems are all related to a tree, which can also be used to describe a human life, right? So the next one is literary devices. So the poets use some of the figures of speech and sensory image to convey the purpose and idea of the poem. So it is important to use a literary device to widen the imagination of the reader. And the tone of the poem is serious and sad, since it's talk about what death feels like and what is the importance of life. So that is the poem analysis of Ang Isang Punong Kahoy. So the next one is Amado V. Hernandez. So si Amado V. Hernandez, his full name is Amado Vera Hernandez. He is born September 13, 1903, and he died March 24, 1970 at the age of 66. So, he was a member of Akademya ng Wikang Tagalog and of the Press Club, or WW2. Si Amando V. Hernandez, he is known as the Makata ng Manggagawa or poet of the labors in our literature. In 1929, he challenged De Jesus, the acknowledged king of Balagtasan, to debate in verse on the issue of nationalism and independence. So again, Amando V. Hernandez, he is known as Makata ng Manggagawa, poet of the laborers, and the year of 1929, he challenged Corazon de Jesus to debate the issue about nationalism and independence. So the famous work of Amando V. Hernandez is Isang di Panglangit. So he contributed a lot writing to literature like Isang di Panglangit, A Stretch of Heaven. So the poem was written on April 22, 1952 in Muntinlupa prison. So it was prison during the imprisonment of Amado Hernandez. So the theme of Di Panglangit is the theme was on the social level, nationalism, also injustice, anxiety, and tragedy, and are reflected from the poem. So the poem may also be considered post-colonial because it reflects the idea of transitions, especially in the government. So the message of the poem is, the poems wanted to tell the readers to have that courage to face life's challenge, learn how to fight for our own right, trust yourself, and what you can do, believe in God. Most importantly, so the sense of nationalism. So we should love our country and always fight for the freedom of our nations. So we experience a lot from the past. This serve as our motivation for pursuing the freedom that we want. So we can deny right now that we're not that independent in terms of decision for the welfare of the country. So there will be external forces that somehow dictate our own government. So that is the poem analysis of Isang Di Panglangit. So and we have Valeriano Hernandez Peña. So he is born December 12, 1852 and he died September 7, 1922. He is known for the father of the Tagalog novel. So in the year of 1990s, Hernandez joined the staff of the Kaluwagan, which was in the same year replaced by Kapatid ng Bayan, founded by Pascual Poblete. So again, Valeriano Hernandez Peña, he is known for father of the Tagalog novel. And his famous work is Nena at Neneng. So Nena at Neneng is his first novel published in the vernacular in the 1905. The moral lesson is a novel was created by Valeriano Hernandez Peña as he wanted to show Filipinos great lessons such as proper manners and should be realized and conducted. So the summary of Nena at Neneng, si Nena and Neneng are two friends of marrying age who go through the test of life and test of life and love together. So Nena's heart is broken by Miguel, an ill-mannered young man who has taken the virginity of another woman, which is si Chayong. Chayong is miserable because of what happened, especially since she is in love with Narciso. So, bidding goodbye to Chayong and hoping Miguel will do what is right. So, Narciso's son finds new love with Neneng and the two are married. So, Nena on the other hand meets Geograsis. And the two fall in love while Nena is settled and happy. So, Neneng is abandoned by Narciso due to what he thought was sexual indiscretions. So when Narciso returns, Neneng has already died of a broken heart. What a sad story. So the theme of Nena and Neneng is chastity as equal to a woman's dignity. The second one is proper decorum and strict morality, and the third one is friendships. So, chastity as equal to a woman's dignity. So, Chayong, diba sa story, si Chayong is unfortunate loss of virginity to Miguel's affair. So, as a warning to young women, Nena and Neneng on the other hand, serve as epitomes of good conduct and consciousness. So, Narcisso's abandonment, inabandon niya si Neneng upon a suspicion of sexual indication. So it emphasized the weight given to a woman, chastity. So the second one is proper decorum and strict morality. So although a noble love as well, si Nena at si Neneng deviates from the wild passions of romantic love and dwells on the proper behavior of those in courtship, especially during the noble's time. So it guides women on how and why to be on guard with men. So it shows men how to be gentlemen. So that's the thing. And the last one is friendship. So the novel is also a chronicle of a long friendship between two women and how they sustain the relationship despite separation and the twists and turns in their lives. So that is the theme. Again, chastity as equal to woman's dignity, proper decorum and strict morality, and lastly, friendship. And our last Filipino writers is Inigo Ed Regalado. So, Regalado, born June 1, 1888, and he died July 24, 1976, and he at the age of 88. So Regalado, as an editor, Inigo Regalado was one of the powerful voices in the newspaper and magazine during the first part of the 90s. So it was during his time when the golden age of the Tagalog novel, so year of the 1905 to 1921 started. So Inigo Regalado was a son of popular writer during the Spanish time known as Old Dagger. So he proved that he not only followed the footsteps of his father, but also reached the peak of his success by his own or by his pen, right?
And now we are going to discuss the Tagalog drama of Filipino literature. In the American period, a lot of changes began to unravel. Almost all literary genres were affected with the coming of the American and the English language. However, there are still Filipino men of letters who wanted to use the Tagalog medium and sought to improve various literature using it. In Tagalog drama, Severino Reyes and Hermogenes Ilagan criticized the Spanish Moro and showed that dramas can be powerful vehicles for propagation of Filipino values for the audiences. Aside from these values, these dramas were extensively used as a way to promote nationalism as well. First, we have Severino Reyes. Severino Reyes is the father of the Tagalog drama. He is the author of The Walang Sugat. So the theme of The Walang Sugat is the play is about the injustices Filipinos suffered under Spanish colonial rule, so including the accusations of Filipino prisoners by Spanish friars for expressing their patriotism. The next one we have Aurelio Tolentino, the dramatist in whom the Kapampangan Stake Pride, best remembered as the first nationalist dramatist. Included his writing were Luhang Tagalog, his masterpiece, and Kahapon, Ngayon at Bukas that resulted in his incarcerations. And lastly, we have Hermogenes Ilagan. Hermogenes Ilagan is the father of Tagalog Sarsuela and the father of Filipino Sarsuela. So founded the group Kapana Ilagan that presented many dramas in Central Luzon. His most popular Sarsuela is Dalagang Bukid. This is the first Filipino feature-length film made by a Filipino director regarded as the father of Filipino movies and is now lost forever. So he wrote also The Bunganga ng Pating or Shark Mouth. So this gave much more honor and fame to Hermogenes Ilagan.
Everyone, and today I will going to discuss about the Tagalog short story of Philippine literature. As you can see here in PowerPoint presentation, the Tagalog short story, the emergence of English short story was instrument to development of the literary genre called Maikling Kwento or simply refers to Toast Dagli. Ito daw ay mas lumawak yung kakayahan ng mga Pilipino na upang ipahayag nila yung kanilang saloobin through short story at yung mga culture na meron sila. It's a development of genre. Mula sa iba't ibang genre, mas lumawak yung kaalaman nila at dumagdag yung genre meron sila. And Dagli and short story has a similarities because short story can be read in one sitting. Next is short story begins to appear in Pandaliiga Dalai ang Limbangan or short story time lectures kung saan ito yung nagiging paraan ng mga Pilipino noon upang magsaya or malibang yung sarili nila. There are two collections of Tagalog story were published during the American period. Let us proceed to two collections of Tagalog story were published during American period. First is Ang Kwentong Ginto written by Alejandro Abadilla, 25 best stories published in 1936. Parola Ginto written by Pedro Reyes. It's all about the experience of Filipino when other country colonized or sinakop tayo ng mga iba't ibang banyaga, and it's also tackled how Filipino live the past and how the Filipinos survive. Now let us proceed to Tagalog poetry. Before we start to tackle the Tagalog poetry that Philippine literature have, we will going to identify the three types of poetry. First is narrative poetry. It's a form of poetry that's used to tell a story. Example is novels. Next is lyric poetry. It's a form of poetry that expresses the thoughts and the feelings through music and rhyme. Next is dramatic poetry. Is a combination of drama and poetry that is written to verse and meant to be recited in public. Almost all Tagalog writers during American period were able to compose and create a good and beautiful poems that which made Filipino popular when it comes to poem. Next is, even if poetry writing is an old as history, poetry still surfaces with the sweetness and beauty and melody. The common theme of Filipino poetry is love, despair, grief, doubt, joy, hope, and sorrow. This other poetry is commonly dedicated for Filipino that experience different problems, sorrows, happiness, and for Filipino who sacrifice their own life to save our country. And one of the example of poetry rather is Florantet Laura.
Let's go to other forms of literature. Ilocano literature. Ilocanos are Austronesian-speaking people. Families and clans arrive by viray or bilog, meaning boat. The term Ilocano originates from I, meaning from, and Look, meaning cove or bay, or people of the bay. Ilocanos also refer to themselves as Samtoy, a contraction from the Ilocano phrase Sa umiditoy, our language here. Now, let's go to Pedro Bucaneg. Pedro Bucaneg is the father of Ilocano literature. Bucanegan, which means balagtasan in Ilocano, is a poetic contest. Pedro Bucaneg is a renowned Filipino poet. He is also acknowledged as the author of the Ilocano epic Biag ni Lamang. This story is about Lamang's life from avenging his father's murder, to being eaten by the water monster Berkakan, to being reborn and living happily ever after with his love, Ines Canoyan. Let's go to Claro Caluya. Claro Caluya is the prince of Ilocano poets. He is known as a poet and novelist. Claro Caluya wrote the comedies Aldeana at La Adventurera at mga sarswelang Pateg ti Uma Akari at Napatpateg ti Ayatili. Siya rin ang kompositor ng awit na Banatiran, isang awit hingin sa isang ibong napakaganda. Bilang palangal, Isang monumento ang inialay sa kanya sa harap ng munisipyo ng Pidig. At sa logo ng St. Anne Academy sa Pidig ay may arpa upang isagisag ang yamang pangkultura ng bayan at ipagunita sa mga mag-aaral ang talino ni Kaluya. Last one is Leon Pichay. Leon Pichay is known as the best bukanegero from Bukaneg. He was known as the king of Ilocano poets during the 50s. Pichay was one of the most active Ilocano writers in his time. He is also a poet novelist, short writer, dramatic dramatist, and essayist. Some examples of his work are Kailukoan, which means Ilocos. This is about his people, the Ilocanos. Ni Kaingungot Ko, my beloved. Nena, Anaig Karauruak, Nena, joy of my soul, which he wrote for his wife, Filomena Oasan. Next is Ayaten Ka Uray, Ulpitanak, which in translation is I love you despite your cruelty. Next is Pinaan ni Ulila, have pity on the poor orphan. Next is O Apo Jesucristo nga Ari, O Christ the Lord. It is a religious poem. And Tidilak, my mother tongue. It is a patriotic poem written for his love for the Ilocano language and his conviction that as a writer, one should use the mother tongue. If you have question about the other forms, you can comment on the comment section. And before I end this, I have one question and you can comment your answer at the comment section. My question is, what Ilocanos refer themselves as?
Thank you, Ms. Daniel. So let's move on to the next literature, the literature of Kapampangans or the Pampango literature. The historical background of Pampanga is that the province name is derived from the Kapampangan words, which is Pampang Ilog, means rich riverside, where the early Malayan settlements were concentrated along Rio Grande de la Pampanga, the Great Pampanga River, until such time that adventurous Malayan settlers expanded their domain into hinterlands of Kapampangan region. Pampanga is well known for its rich delicacies and cuisines. During the early years of Kapampangan, the literature flourished. Literature introduced through the Spanish-speaking elites and native-speaking players, oral laws which continue to serve the needs of the working class in this predominantly agriculture province. So, their literatures are riddles, sayings, children's rhymes, legends, and folktales that reflects the flora, fauna, and geographic features of the province. So, let's move on to the two well-known literature that they uses as their pastime, riddles and sayings. First, the riddles or buktong. The Kapampangans loves exchanging buktong or riddles at social events, funeral wakes, and weddings. This is their favorite pastime during the war. Playing buktungan was widely practiced in rural areas that even while they are walking home, they do buktungan. Sayings or kasabihan. Here are some examples of sayings or the kasabihan in Kapampangan. Number 1, mataas at mataruktok, masadlak, kaya pangabaldog. Means the higher the climb, the harder the fall. Next is the igparo makabaluktot, dalan nining masalusong agos. Ing parong makabaluktot, dalan nining masalusong agos. Or a bent shrimp allows the current to pass through. Next is ing aso makabaluktot, putulman i makapulot. Means a lazy dog will not find even a bone. Ikalalapit akong api nung ikabisang makapili. Means, don't come near a fire if you don't want to risk being burned. And the last is makapang mga plus iglang sugat, mga plus ing alang sugat. If there's pain, there must be a wound. Let's move on to the two well-known writers in the Kapampangan literature. So the first one is Juan Crisostomo Cabala Soto, also known as Quixote, the father of Pampanga literature. He was born on January 27, 1867 at Santa Ines, Bacolor, Pampanga, and died on July 12, 1918 at the age of 51. He is a journalist, poet, and a playwright. He wrote numerous lyrical poems, historical dramas, numerous plays, and philosophical essays and sarsuelas, the most famous of which is Alang Diyos, or There is No God, in 1901. Soto joined the Katipunan during 1896 revolution and worked with Maximo Hizon in promoting Pampango ideals. He practiced in several battles against the American troops in 1896 under General Thomas MacArthur's forces. Soto married twice. His first wife was Julia Amaida, who bore his 6 children. Julia died in 1903, so he decided to have a second wife, which is Rosario Palma, that born his 4 children. Move to the next writer, Aurelio Tolentino. Aurelio Tolentino was born on October 13, 1867 at Guagua, Pampanga, and died on July 5, 1915. He is considered one of the greatest writers in the annals of Tagalog literature. He joined the revolutionary organization Katipunan, who worked alongside Andres Bonifacio. He was imprisoned by the Spaniards for his activities. He was one of the signatories of the Declaration of Philippines Independence in Kawit, Cavite on June 12, 1897. It was after the Philippine Revolution that Tolentino concentrated on writing. He wrote plays and novels in Spanish, Tagalog, and also Kapampangan. His most famous work in verse is Dakilang Asal, or The Noble Behavior, as a series of poems in which he described the proper behavior that young people should observe. Let me read his poem that entitled Kahapon, Ngayon at Bukas. For me, that work of Aurelio Tolentino is about the colonization. Alam naman natin na sinakop ang bansa natin ng ibang mga lahi na Chinese, Spaniards, and Americans. Nababalikan natin yung mga happenings nung past kahit na malalalim. Nababalikan natin sila using the literary pieces that they made. And that's all. Thank you for listening. I hope you understand and you learn something. The literature of the Kapampangans or the Pampango literature. Before I'll pass the screen to Miss Isa Diniega, let me ask you one question. According to what I've discussed, what are the Kapampangans' favorite pastime during the war? That's all. Thank you. I will pass the screen to Miss Isa Diniega. Miss Isa.
Alright, so now we are going to discuss further about the other parts of our lesson, which is the Visayan literature. But before I proceed to discuss to you about this particular topic, I would like to give credits first to Sir Darren Edem, as I have used some information from his video for the content of this lesson. I also have included link of his YouTube video in the references section, so you can also watch it to learn more about the topic. So now let us proceed to the Visayan literature. So in order to understand the Visayan literature, we have first to discuss about its geographic description. So it is in Visayas. It is obviously in Visayas, which is the smallest island group in the Philippines. So we have the 3 major group of islands, which is the Luzon, the Visayas, and the Mindanao. So Visayas is in the middle part, and it is also the smallest part of, the three. It is the smallest among the three. So it is divided into three regions: the Visayan the Visayan island is divided in three regions, which is the region 6, the Western Visayas, and the region 7, which is the Central Visayas, and lastly the region 8, which is the Eastern Visayas. So in the Western Visayas, which is the region 6, this is the region wherein the Warais, I no, the Hiligaynon speaking people, or the Ilonggo, and there is also the Aklanon, the and also the Kinaraya speaking people. It is because in the western part it is the place of the major provinces, or the provinces in this part are Iloilo, the Aklan, the Antique, Guimaras, Negros Occidental, all that. That's all. So the people in this particular provinces were speaking usually in Hiligaynon language, or in Karaya, or and also in some part of it is there are also many Cebuano speaking people, just like me. I came from Western Visayas and I speak Cebuano, so it's very common in that area. Now we have the Central Visayas, which is the region 7. So it is obviously the central part of the Visayas. It is where Cebu is located. So the other provinces in this region are the Negros Oriental, and also the Siquijor and Bohol. So the this is the place where Cebuano is very prominently or widely spoken, and also there is Boholano, and the other types of Visayan language, which is in Siquijor. They have another accent when using the language. Now, lastly, we have the other region, which is the region 8, the eastern region. So it is the land of Waraynons. So it is where Samar is located, Leyte is located, Beliran, Eastern Samar, Southern Leyte. So dito yung mga tao dito they are speaking Waray language. So sila yung mga Waraynon. Okay, now we have here the major regional languages. So I think I have already discussed about them. So we have the major talaga is Cebuano, which is prominently talaga ginagamit sa Cebu and even in other parts of these regions. Another is Hiligaynon, which is typically spoken in Western Visayas, like in Iloilo, Capiz, Guimaras, again. Kinaraya, also in Iloilo, Capiz, Western Visayas, and Waray, which is spoken widely in eastern part of Visayas. Now, we also have here the 7 main islands, which are the Bohol, Cebu, Panay, Samar, Negros, Leyte, and Masbate. So these major islands are very much common, or lagi nating naririnig usually kasi sikat sila at malalaking islands. Now, since we're done with the demographic description of the island, let's proceed now to the Visayan literature. So we have to describe about the literature, what is the many common or famous forms of it. So now let's discuss. So in Visayan literature, it was documented by the Father Jesuit, Father Ignacio Francisco Alcinar. It is because during this time, very little lang ang mga marunong magsulat, di ba? It's because since we are colonized by the Spaniards, so they are referring to those people who are in poverty as Indios, and they are not able to, or they are not allowed to go to school. So hindi talaga marunong magsulat, and which is why the literature during this period are not hindi masyadong hindi masyadong nag-survive. It's because hindi sila nasusulat. So, those who are documented by Father Ignacio, so yun lang yung mas nag-survive until now. So, they are more on oral literature. So, usually, even in the different parts of the Philippines, usually ay in oral talaga literature. And which is why when it is in oral, there are many magbabago. There will be many changes as it is passed down from generation to another. Unlike when it is written, mag-stuck pa rin dun ang idea, mag-stuck pa rin yung language forms. So that is why it really did not much survive since very little lang ang document ng mga literature before. So there is no evidence in prose literature, but ordinary Visayan speech was itself rich with metaphor and colorful imagery, and the poetry must have been even more so. So there are very little um, evidence nga ng prose kasi hindi masyadong na-document yung mga literature during those times, but it is certain and it is still evident ngayon until now that the Visayan literature is very rich when it comes to poetry. And later on, gonna discuss about the different poetry, poem forms in this island. Now, it started with fables and legends of the early people in the Philippines and colonial period, right down to Spanish influences. So, it is very understandable and it's very common that usually ang form ng literature during those times were in fables and legends is because yung mga lolo natin, mahilig sila magkwento sa mga kaapuhan. And and the very much basic form of narrative ay yung fables and legends. Gawa lang sila ng kwento sa mga imagination nila. Fables which gives lessons to their grandchildren. So yun. So that is why it is very much basic, the fundamental of the Visayan literature. Now let's proceed to okay, then we have to discuss the forms of Visayan literature. But before I forget, I hope you will learn or you will listen carefully because at the end of this discussion, I'm going to ask you a question, and that question will serve as your recitation. You have to answer it and you have to write down your answers or type your answers in the comment section. Okay? So we have here first the poems are called binalaybay. So this is in typically I think it's in the Cebuano language because I can understand it. It's in binalaybay. There are poems which are there are other types of poems too in the Visayan language, but this is the in the Cebuano language which is called the binalaybay. Next we have the stories that are called asoy or sugilanon. So also, this is in the Cebuano language. So, asoy, stories is translated as asoy or Sibilanon in Cebuano. So it's just the same. It's just typically a story in the different ways. It is just normally just a story, either in fictional or not. Now we have here the riddles are called tigmo. So riddles. So it's just translated as tigmo in the Visayan language. Okay? Or paktakon. Now we have here the proverbs are translated to hurubatun. So it's just another translation. They're just the same. They're usually in two lines and rhyme. So uh, proverbs as we have as our basic knowledge is usually from the Bible and which gives us wisdom, just verses in the Bible which gives us wisdom. Now we have here the lullabies are called ili-ili. So I think it's very familiar of for you the song ili-ili tulog ka na. So this is they regarded as a creepy song, but it's actually a song for the baby. It just translates into um, okay, I will sing the lines. Ili ili tulog anay wala diri imong nanay kadto tinda bakal papay, ili-ili, tulog anay. So this song just basically means that baby, you must sleep now. You must sleep. Um, do not cry because your mother is not here. But when your mother come home, she will bring you bread and papay bread. Okay, so that doesn't really have any horrific or horrible connections, but maybe just the tone of the song kasi medyo airy siya, medyo nakakatakot pakinggan. But it doesn't mean any horror horror meanings. Walang ganun. Next, we have here the ambahan. It is composed of 7 syllable metric lines and it can run to more than 4 lines. So it is just the same as the ambahan in Mindoro, if you are familiar with it. So it is just the same. It's like in it's just mainly composed of 7 syllables. So we can just make it. It is just possible, and we have. I think it can also run to 4 lines. Now we have the Siday. It is a long poetic battle between two paid poets representing the two families in the pursuit of marriage. So in some parts of Visayas, there is this tradition wherein bago sila ikasal, they have to present both families in and they have to present poems with each other. So ganun. Parang pagalingan sila ng poetry. Oh, next we have the balitaw. It is an extemporaneous exchange of love verses between a man and a woman. So I think it's very familiar from of you. It's very familiar kasi I think in the different parts of the Philippines, we are celebrating Buwan ng Wika and it is also being performed, di ba, sa mga during our high school, nag-perform tayo ng balita wherein there is a male and a female and they're wearing a costume and they're going to dance and they're going to exchange words. And this is basically about just pursuing a woman. So I have here, later I'm going to present to you an example about of balita. Okay. Okay, next we have here the balak. No, it's not the the nun. It's balak. It is a form of Visayan poetry which usually involves strong emotions. So, balak is just like a spoken poetry but it has a deeper emotions na parang as in malalim talaga na emotion ang pagka-deliver nila ng poetry na to. And sometimes it's parang direct lang siya, free verse, ganun. And it is accompanied with like uh it's with a music na typically ginagamit sa sa Visayas. Okay. Now we're going to tackle about an example of balitaw. I think I'm going to sing you a song. Look at this. It is entitled Pasayaw Ako Day by Max Urban. Pasayaw ako day, sayaw lang sa uban. Ikaw may gusto ko, ganong ako nga ana may uban. Pag nagsa na lang ko day, lagi ko kayo ako'y gusto. Iro-giro, sayero, iro-giro, kintangan, jutay. So the translation is just, it's basically just about pursuing a woman that doesn't like you. So the male in this song, he asked the girl if she would like to dance with him. On the second line, the girl being the so-called dalagang Filipina, she refused because it was very common among women before na mga hard to get sila. So the male answered back to the third line saying that he wants to dance with her than any other girl. And the girl replied by asking, why her? Why her among other girls? And the boy said that he doesn't love them the way he loves her. Okay, and the next The man asked the woman if he could hug her. This is the symbolization of respect among Filipino men to women. However, the woman said that um, she really would not agree because she doesn't like the guy. So that's just basically about pursuing a woman. That is an example of balita. It is better if you can watch the some videos on YouTube about balita because medyo ano siya interesting. They are wearing props, they are wearing costumes, which is very interesting talaga. Entertaining. Okay, next. Now we have to discuss the specific talaga. Specific naman natin ang every part or ang region ng Visayas. So we have here the literature in Western Visayas. So as we can remember, as what I have told you before, this is the region 6 which composed of Antique, Aklan, the Iloilo, the Capiz, the Guimaras, and Negros Occidental. The language that is typically spoken in this area or in this region are the Ilonggo, sometimes Bisaya, and Kinaraya. Okay, the famous literature in this particular region is the Hinila Wood, it is the oldest and perhaps most well-known epic of Panay. It narrates the story of the goddess of the eastern sky named Alonsina who reached the age of maidenhood. Every god from different places tried to win her heart. Soon, the goddess decided to marry a mortal from Halawood, Dato Paubari. So I think it is familiar. There are other stories which is familiar. For, uh, I think it's familiar para sa inyo, which is the Tungkong Langit and Alunsina. But it is not the same in the story or the epic Hinilawud. Uh, the Alunsina the name Alunsina was just used in the different stories variety of stories in Panay. So Panay siya galing. Now, Tatungkong Langit is a different story, di ba? It tackles about two gods and the goddess, which is Alonsina, and Tungkong Langit is the god of the sky, which wherein sila yung major creator of the earth. But here, Alonsina is a goddess too, but she doesn't like the many suitors that he had, many god suitors that she had. So, but then she fell in love with a mortal man, and then after that, and continuation of the story, the gods are who courted her get mad, and then they sent flood to the Halawood and then to drown the Tupaubari. But then the sibling of Alonsina nag-warn sa kanya, niwarningan siya na umalis sa lugar na yun in order to save themselves. And then they come back after na wala na yung tubig sa Halawood. Okay, that is just basically the story of Hinilawood. Next, we have here the fall of Bulubulak. This is the tale from Panay about the seven deadly sins. So I will tell you a short discussion or the short story about it. So the fall of Bulubulak is about a tale in Iloilo or closely in Panay, wherein there is a particular island called Bulubulak, and it is where the seven deadly sins were first born. So it's because there in this particular island it is very blessed kasi meron silang bountiful harvest, a lot of crops, they are so wealthy, they have everything. And then they are still not satisfied with what they have. They are very prideful, they are very proud of what they have, and lagi nilang pinapainggit yung other towns, yung other ano, and then they are so greedy, hindi sila palabigay, and because they are so wealthy, they have everything, they fall into lustful desires a lot, in their bodily or fleshly desires. And also it's because they are so rich, they have everything they need, they become a slot, wherein they are very they did not work anymore. So these all of these sins, because of all of these sins, the God get angry, and then uh, the sky opened, and then he sent fire, 7 fires, which really eat, kinain yung island. Nagform siya ng 7 islands, which is, it's like a stone, black stone. Okay, so yun yung story of the fall of Pulubulak. It's just about 7 deadly sins. Next, we have, okay, so next we have here the some notable writers of Western Visayas. So there are, just like other places in the Philippines, there are also a lot of famous writers here in Visayas. So the most famous one is Graciano Lopez Haina. I think it's very familiar, even in our history topics. So he was a Filipino journalist, orator, reformist, national hero, which is well known in his newspaper, the La Solidaridad. The Philippine historians regard Lupicina, along with Marcelo del Pilar and Jose Rizal, as a triumvirate of Filipino propagandists. So as we can remember from our history lesson, so isa to si Graciano Lopez Haina is very active when it comes to propaganda. He is a well-known writer. He's very famous, and he is the one who established the newspaper, which is La Solidaridad, which tackles about the oppressions. It became the voice of the Filipino people against the oppression from Spanish colonialism. Okay, so kasama niya, along with him, kasama niya dun sa propaganda na La Solidaridad, sila Plaridel, si Marcel del Pilar, and si Rizal, using his name as pen name Laong Laan. Okay? So, ito si Lupisan na galing siya sa Western Visayas, known there. And we also had the other uh, well-known writers, which includes Magdalena Halanduni, Esteban Havillana, Flavio Sargosa Cano, Leoncio de Rieda, Alfred Gonzalez, de Mesonza, Dorin Fernandez. Okay, so now let's proceed to the next part, which is the Eastern Visayas. So as we can remember, Eastern Visayas, it is where Samar, uh, Biliran, Leyte, and northern or southern Leyte is are located. So in Samar, they are speaking uh, prominently the Warainon language, or the Waray language. So they have the very famous literature, which is the Buwaon and Tutuon, which is, this is a Waray folk tale with the English translation Falsehood and Truth. It is about two friends named Buwaon and Tutuon who could not find work, so they decided to go away from their place to look for their fortune elsewhere. And then they reached the kingdom, a particular kingdom nearby, and then they pledged to serve the king. So after that, they are doing their best to impress the king, especially Buwaon. Buwaon here is the more aggressive one, while Tutuon is the more calm one, peaceful, with peaceful mind. So he has a very good attitude, is portrayed as the truth, is a good person, and Buwaon is the bad one. Now, Buwaon has made a lot of things na makakasira kay Tutuon. But then at the end of the day, si Tutuon pa rin ang nanalo, and he got the prize of being married to a princess. So, kasi they were given different challenges from the king, and still si Tutuon pa rin ang nanalo. It's just typical epic, just typical folk tale na usually that always the truth will always prevail. Okay, so next we have here the amumu, or si ipot-ipot. So in Tagalog, it translates just the monkey and the what it's just like, it's just about the monkey and the firefly. Okay, so this is the fable about gorilla and the firefly. The lesson it conveys is that one should never belittle those who are small because they could not do big things that big people cannot do. Okay, so I will give a very brief uh, background about this topic. It is all about there are two animals, which obviously the gorilla and the firefly. So the gorilla, he is very boastful and he's a bully. So lagi niyang binubully yung mga animals in the forest. Now one day he meet the alitaptap or the firefly. Um, and then binubully niya yung firefly and he said, "Oh, Firefly, I think the very reason why you always wear or you're always bringing a light at your butt is because ano, takot ka sa lamok, takot ka, duwag ka, you are a coward." So yun yung sabi ni Gorilla. Sabi naman ni Firefly, "No, hindi ako takot." Lagi niyang dinedefend niya yung sarili niya. Pero bully talaga. Gorilla always tried to tease her. Now, pagdating ni Gorilla into the other parts of the forest where there are many animals, pinagkalat niya na duwag daw si Firefly. So, Firefly, hearing about the news na pinapahiya siya ni Gorilla, nagalit siya, na trigger. So, he went to Gorilla's home and then decided to challenge him. So, sabi niya, sige, mag-challenge sa'yo bukas. Bukas, mag-challenge sa'yo. Kung sinong mananalo, bawiin mo. Kung ako ang mananalo, bawiin mo yung sinabi mo na ako ay duwag. Okay? So, yun nga. So, tinawanan lang siya ni Gorilla or ni Amumungo. And then, but determined talaga si Firefly. Sabi pa nga ni Amumungo, okay, magdala ka ng mga kasama mo. Sabi naman ni Firefly, no, I will go alone. Ikaw ang dapat maghanda. So, okay. Okay, napagkasundoan nila. And in the morning, ayun na nga, ang pack ng gorilla, ang daming gorilla, while only one firefly. So, and then, nag-start na ang, the timer starts na. Now, now, the first thing that Firefly did is that she jumps into the nose of the gorilla. So, the other gorilla, he wants to kill Firefly, obviously. So sinapak niya yung isang gorilla. So nagalit naman yung isang gorilla. So nagsapakay sila. And then hanggang nagpatayan sila. And lastly, yung si amo mo na lang ang natira. Nagpatayan na silang lahat dahil sa galit nila na sinapak ang isa't isa. Okay, so that is just a very brief discussion. Oh, so if you're going to click that, you will be directed to the YouTube video about the story. Okay, next we are going to tackle about the literature in Central Visayas. It is the last region in the Visayas that we are going to discuss. And Central Visayas is obviously the central part of Visayas. It is where Cebu, Negros Occidental, and Bohol and Siquijor are located. So, the very famous literary piece in Central Visayas is the Sikilak and Sikabay. It is about the Visayan creation myth about Captain Magwayan, who are both gods, and they created earth and all living things. Captain planted bamboo in the garden, and one day it broke into two sections and stepped out the man and the woman, who were respectively named as Sikalak and Sikabay. So it's just basically just like the creation story in Tagalog, which is the Malakas and Maganda, wherein um, they came from the bamboo trunk na tinuka ng isang ibon. So that's just the other version. It's just in Visayan version. Okay, next we have here the other literary form or literary piece of Central Visayas, which is the Catalina of Dumaguete. It is a legend about 16-year-old girl named Catalina was very beautiful and industrious, but with many strange ways. She was said to have mysterious powers and was said to have saved the Dumaguete from the Sigbin. So it's an interesting story. Then si Catalina, siya siyang anak ng the daughter of a poor guy, and since they are most people in their hometown, when you are in poverty, they were bullied, they're not that respected, but her father was respected very much even though they are poor. It's because his father is very skilled. He is the number one winemaker in their place. So respected siya masyado. Now this particular part in Dumaguete, there is a very disastrous animal which is called the sigbin. It's like a half goat monster wherein it destroys humans, it scares humans, it might attack humans too, and it eats a lot of crops, kaya nagiging problem talaga siya ng mga tao doon. So yung mga tanim nila, kinakain ng sigbin. Now it is believed, it is said that Catalina is one of the many na taga-taboy ng sigbin. So that is why at a very young age, she was able to sent the sigbin away. So, napaalis niya yung mga sigbin. So, that is just the very short uh, background about this story. But actually, there are a place now which is called Santa Catalina in Dumaguete, which is named after her. Okay. Okay. So next we have, all right. So we have here the last part of this slide, which is some notable writers of Central Visayas. So we have here Vicente Soto, the father of Cebuano literature and father of Cebuano journalism. So he is the one who started the journalism, especially in Cebu. And he published the Ang Suga, which is the first newspaper in Cebuano language in 1900s. Now the second one we have Heriberto Gomban, he is the father of Visayan literature, and he wrote the Zarzuela, the Murmuro, and play in Visayan. So here are the other notable writers. We have Florentino Rallos, Marcia Velez, Timoteo Castro, Vicente Ranudo, Filomeno Roble, Juan Villagonzalo, Felimon Soto, and Leoncio Avila. So in order to see if you have understand or if you have listened this discussion, I want you to answer the recitation question, and you are going to write your answer or type your answer in the comment section of this post. So for the sixth question, who is the Filipino journalist, orator, reformist, and national hero who is well known for his newspaper La Solidaridad? Okay. And now here are the references for this discussion. You can click the link if you want to learn more about the topic. And now here are the entire recitation questions which were given by the previous discusser of this entire video. For the first question, choose your favorite piece of famous literature that mentioned in the discussion and find out the theme of the literature. For the second item, who is the father of the Tagalog drama? For the third one, what is the example of Tagalog poetry given in the video? Now the fourth one, what Ilocanos refer themselves as? And the fifth one, what is their favorite pastime during the war? And the sixth and the last one, who is the Filipino journalist, orator, reformist, and national hero who is well known for his newspaper La Solidaridad? So these are the entire 6 recitation questions, and you are going to comment your answers in every number in the comment section of this post or announcement. Now, before we end this video, we're going to give you an activity which is wherein you are going to write a poem on any subject that you wish. It is acceptable to use rhyme or not. Afterwards, write down the message and the theme of the poem you have created. So here are the rubrics. We have originality, which is 10 points, content or relevance, 10 points, organization of ideas, 10 points, creativity and visual impacts, 10 points, and timely submission, which is also 10 points. All right, thank you for listening. We hope that you learned something from this discussion.